Michael Lawler of New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When President Biden took office, he made a lot of ill-thought-out and, frankly, foolish foreign policy decisions. But at the top of the list was delisting the Houthis. While the Houthis were a designated foreign terrorist organization under the Trump administration, for clear reasons, President Biden almost immediately took them off the list. He did this apparently in an attempt to encourage the Houthis to reduce hostilities, enter into talks, and improve the conditions for the Yemeni people. But shockingly, just the opposite happened. The Houthis did not reduce hostilities and instead renewed efforts to expand territorial control inside of Yemen. We have also been unable to negotiate a meaningful resolution with the Houthis. And of course, the Yemeni people are still living under oppression. Dr. Pollack, can you go into some detail about the conditions and abuses the Yemeni people living under Houthi control have been living in for the past few years?
Briefly, Dr. Alterman began this. The Houthis are terrible at governance. They do not understand how to run a country. They never were particularly interested in doing so. And I think they were surprised when they had the opportunity to do so. The economy in Yemen is stalled badly. As we all know, there are enormous problems in terms of food distribution. Oil production, well, the Houthis have very little control over it, but in their areas there's very little going on. And we also need to recognize that the international community has been very rightly concerned about the humanitarian situation in Yemen for many years. The Houthis have not. Very famously, in 2018, a joint Yemen government and Emirati force was threatening to take the last Houthi-controlled seaport of Hodeidah. The world was terrified that there would be slaughter in Hodeidah. We descended upon the Emiratis, and the Yemeni government begged them to stop. They agreed to do so. The Houthis were forced to sign an agreement because they were about to lose Hodeidah. And the idea was they would leave Hodeidah to enable humanitarian supplies. They, of course, immediately reneged.
So that we're clear here, delisting the Houthis did nothing to help the Yemeni people and worsened regional security. In light of this administration's failed policy and the Houthis' continued aggression against the U.S., Ms. Ledeen, do you think the group should be relisted as an FTO?
As soon as possible, yes.
Ms. Ledeen, do the Houthis meet all the qualifications to be listed as an FTO?
Absolutely, they do, yes.
And we passed a bill through this committee last week to require the relisting of the Houthis as an FTO. So from that bill and from this conversation and from my absolutely clear picture of what is happening in the Gulf region, it is my hope that the administration does the right thing and relists them immediately as an FTO. One of the bills that I passed through the House Foreign Affairs Committee was the SHIP Act, which I led with my friend and colleague Jared Moskowitz. This bill would establish new sanctions on entities that process illicit Iranian petroleum. Ports and refineries that facilitate Iran's oil trade are effectively financing the Iranian regime and its terrorist proxies. It is no secret that Iran sends financial and material assistance to Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, just to name a few. Can you all confirm that Iran provides funding to terrorist groups in the region?
Yes, they do.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Do you all believe that the President and his administration, State Department, and Defense Department know, just like all of you, that Iran funds these terrorist groups?
There's no doubt, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
How have Iran's proxy activities changed since the Biden administration came into office and relaxed enforcement of sanctions? Has it gotten better?
Far from it. They've become much more violent and aggressive, and they've caused many deaths and destruction across the region. Yes.
Mr. Lawler, I think after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Quds Force of the Islamic Republican Guard, many of these proxy groups have had more autonomy, and I think the Iranians have enjoyed the fact that they have had less responsibility and less control, and that in many ways they have reaped more benefits from the misbehavior of these groups, but they have less control over these groups than they had under Qasem Soleimani.
So is your argument that Soleimani should have been left alone?
My argument is that assassinating Qasem Soleimani has not ended the threat from the Iranian proxy groups, and in many ways the way it has morphed.
Did
in
you
unintentional
oppose
ways.
his assassination?
Do I oppose it now? I'm saying it didn't have the desired effect because
Well, it doesn't have the desired effect because this administration has weakened its sanctions. When you allow oil revenues to increase $80 billion, nearly 60% since this administration took office, and these funds are being used to fund Hamas, to fund Hezbollah, to fund the Houthis, then yeah, you're right. There's not a good consequence of that. But that has nothing to do with assassinating Soleimani. That has everything to do with this administration's policy position to be weak on Iran. That's a policy choice that this administration has made. And that is a function of relaxing sanctions on the sale of Iranian petroleum. That's why I introduced the SHIP Act. China is the biggest purchaser of Iranian petroleum.
Mr. Chairman, you asked us to abide by 5 minutes.
And thank you very much, Congressperson Lawler. So we need to proceed, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And hey, I was trying to be respectful to the congressman from Tennessee to get him back over here to sit quietly so he could ask his questions